Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two, where we look into the challenges that naturally occur in marriage and see if we can explore solutions and ways of helping couples to move forward in a loving and amicable fashion. This week I have with me, as always, my co-host, Sister Ruby Soa. Assalamu alaikum, sister. And hoping to give us the Islamic philosophical perspective, Sheikh Ili. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Pleasure to have you today, Sheikh.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
So because of time, if we can just jump straight into the first scenario, and I'll read from one of our viewers who sent in a very challenging letter. It reads, "Dear It Takes Two, after living with my wife for a couple of months, I have begun to notice that she has a problem. It has come to my attention that she's been making herself sick. She is not overweight in the slightest. I do not understand why she is doing this. I try to talk to her about it, but she seems to get embarrassed and distressed. At first she started denying it. After that she then admitted what she was doing and she promised that she would stop. My concern is not only that this is un-Islamic, but that she is also harming her health. I do not know what else to do." I think the first thing that comes to mind, because the brothers mentioned about it being un-Islamic, if I could ask you, Sheikh, to talk about the permissibility, impermissibity, the actual jurisprudential side of the issue.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, the idea of inflicting suffering and pain upon oneself is certainly problematic in Sharia law, in the idea that if it causes unbearable or hardship or harm to one's own life and health, then it is not permissible. The question comes into the idea of whether this particular instance, this sister, is causing excessive harm to herself. Irrespective to that, inducing or forcing oneself to vomit is not permissible, or at least violates or breaks the fast if an individual is fasting during the month of Ramadan, or the making up of the month, the qada of the month. However, outside that, if it is one that is causing harm to her health, which is debilitating or something which is detrimental, then it should certainly not be done.
It would seem as if that she has, but on the surface, it sounds like a psychological condition known as bulimia.
Yes.
What's your thoughts about the challenge the sister's experiencing?
Well, I think, as most of us know, this is a common issue. It's not a phenomenon because it's quite big, and it also occurs within males that start at a very young age. Actually, there's been studies to show that it can start as young as 8. I think what we must be careful with, and I must urge this to the brother, is taking an attitude of disapproval, you're harming yourself, doesn't aid the person at all. So being judgmental, because it's a psychological issue,
For sure.
Nobody in their right mind wants to harm themselves. And we've got to be clear, bulimia isn't always about self-esteem or body image. It can be a way of people coping with emotional stresses in life. They may be in a career where physically they need to look a certain way. They may be just using it as a coping mechanism, trying to control their food and their body when they can't control their surroundings. So what I would suggest to the brother is, it's good that she's admitted it, but this is something that she needs to take control of, and she needs to decide when she's ready to seek help, because this is a challenge with her. So he needs to be supportive. He needs to contact his GP, and they both need to deal with the issue as soon as possible, but realize this is a long process. This is not going to be fixed overnight, and what she needs is encouragement and support, because we don't want her to go off and hide and do this, or be extreme by, while he's sleeping, going to the fridge and binging, etc., because that does happen.
You mentioned rightly that the sister needs help and support in terms of coping, but this being like a psychological issue overall, and it can be triggered, as you said, by whether it is body image or self-esteem, or it can be related to things like depression, things like anxiety. and in relation to them being a couple, you think the husband would also need some support? How could he be supported as well as support his wife, if I can put it like that?
Absolutely. I think there's no relationship, certainly as far as marriage is concerned, that doesn't come with a lot of responsibilities and many challenges. And each person, sometimes the husbands or the wife for that matter, if they're going through a situation like this, they're thinking, okay, why do I have to deal with this? This is unusual. Why is my wife like that? Or the husband would say, why am I confronted with such a scenario? And I think what we have to understand first and foremost is that what's key in a successful marriage is to appreciate that each person is different and that you will encounter a wide variety of challenges. It could be bulimia, it could be other issues, health related or otherwise. So that realization first is crucial, and the sense of loyalty as well. You know, what we find unfortunately in certain parts of Western culture is that the moment there is an issue or there is a challenge, the relationship between the husband and the wife weakens. Somehow they're thinking, you know what, I'm not bothered with this. Why should I have to deal with such a scenario? I mean, it may not be in this instance, but if the person is going through depression, for instance, or they've gone through a bereavement, or whatever it is, the support is so essential in a marital relationship. And what happens is that sometimes if they don't get it, they go to other people, and that weakens that bond between the husband and wife too. Now, just touching on the points that was mentioned, I believe that at the moment one of the key issues, I know that we shouldn't be focused only on the self-esteem element, but the rise of social networking and the presence of people out there. I just, you know, if we just think about it between ourselves in the sense of 20 years ago and compare the situation then and now. Back then, how we look and the image of ourselves is not something that most people were as concerned. They were concerned because they're going out somewhere where somebody's going to see them.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
You know? Otherwise, the idea of comparing our image with others didn't really exist as much. Now, it's a massive challenge where people are under pressure, some of them, to be seen to be living a particular lifestyle, to be seen adopting a number of styles and clothing and so on and so forth. So social networking has added a lot of pressure in that sense.
So Sheikh, are you saying you're taking into account the fact that although Muslims have a certain culture, that just by the fact that Muslims are living in the West, or even if living in traditional Islamic societies, popular culture via internet, via social media is going to impact maybe women's perceptions of them, sisters' perceptions of themselves, and like objectification of women.
You can't help but that those influences saturating you in some way, or other. If you're driving and you see a billboard, you're not necessarily looking at the billboard, you're looking at the traffic, I would hope. But what they're advertising unconsciously is suggestive to you. For example, if you drink this juice, you're going to have vitamins, whatever. So I agree with what the Sheikh is saying, but also what I wanted to add is maybe, and we don't know, we're making assumptions, maybe the sister feels some type of pressure in her marriage, maybe unconsciously she feels that she has to be a certain way. Okay, the brother isn't saying that he would like his wife to look a certain way, but you know, as women we pick up on little things, so maybe she's trying to be, I don't know, the role model of wife, and especially if you're new in a marriage, she's taking on some other issues. But as the Sheikh said, it is a team effort, and he needs support as well to know when the signs are, the triggers are, and what to do, and also not to, you know, browbeat her or become her nanny by, you know, locking the fridge door or emptying the cupboards and stuff, because sometimes males don't know what to do. And so they get extreme with their reactions, following her into the bathroom in case she's sick and stuff. But I think they shouldn't really discuss it with other people and just keep it as a private matter, because if you speak to your grandmother, she'll say, well, you know, my God, from a different generation, what's she doing? Or why doesn't she just eat? Or, you know, so that can be a pressure too. I think they should just take their time. And
it is a big challenge issue. I wanted to come back to you, Sheikh, just to ask two questions. One is about the fiqh side, because as the brother mentioned, it's un-Islamic, and you was talking about it being intentionally to harm your body. how does this, in this scenario, pan out in the sense of it may be the actual naturally occurring consequence of a psychological problems, as opposed to somebody doing it in a general sense, but somebody actually, somebody that she may be suffering from depression, anxiety disorder, some sort of self-purging, or it is a kind of method of trying to cleanse the body, or just a reaction to another psychological
or
disorder.
maybe self-harm.
Yes,
This is a very important point to understand, that in many times in these kind of scenarios, people have to step back and think, okay, is it only this issue, or is there others related to it? The bigger picture is so important, because what we find is often in marital discord or breakdown relationship is that people say, oh, it was so petty over this, or she didn't cook this meal for him, and he's like, how can you not, and he stormed out of the house. But it is not just that meal, it is probably the accumulation of certain ideas or certain problems that have happened, and this is just the final straw, or perhaps it was just an indication of a bigger problem that hasn't been resolved. I feel that in this particular instance, the recommendation is for the brother to be as supportive in many fields and many ways. So number one, to understand the condition and the situation, but number two, the correct way of dealing with it, and that may involve speaking to experts, health professionals, psychologists and others, to be able to be in the picture, because there's a very interesting philosophical idea that's often presented, which is fairly agreed upon rationally, intellectually, that a human being acts upon knowledge. So if I was told, for instance, that if that particular room that you're about to go into is full of small pieces of glass, I have that knowledge. I won't go there barefooted. I will go there wearing shoes, because I know, based on the knowledge, I will get the harm. Yes, it's similar in many instances. That's why the Quran is full of descriptions of what the Day of Judgment is all about, Jannah and Jahannam. Once we have the understanding, we can act upon it. So with these conditions, I think it's very important that we know what we are dealing with, the actual problem that's there, the bigger picture. But not only should we know, but we should be supportive, not give up, explore all possible ways. And sometimes, I mention this to couples. I say it may need a change of setting, a holiday sometimes, just to go out, to take time out from the current. It could be that they're busy. Sometimes it could be that the in-laws are influencing and the husband doesn't know, or they're throwing in these kind of comments here and there. Pressure, this, look at this, look at how she looks, you're not like her, or things like that. Or when I was your age, I was this way, in all aspects, one should be ready to tackle and to see what solutions exist.
I just wanted to say that, our religion is a merciful and compassionate religion. And what I get concerned about is when brothers and sisters write in and they say they want the fiqhi, explanation of, it's wrong to harm yourself. We are all unique and we all have our vices, and Islam covers everything. So I think compassion, as the Sheikh said, working together is vital here. It's not about you've been bad, look what you're doing, it's silly. That's not helpful.
I agree, the fiqhi aspect is important, but it's not the only aspect. But I wanted to ask, Sheikh, is this something that you've come across? Because as a counsellor, I know this is very common. This is very good, particularly amongst women, but even, as you mentioned, men, particularly men who are into performing or combat sports where they have to make a certain weight, for example, for fights and things like this, for contests. But so I've come across men and women. But I wonder, in terms of the Muslim community, is this something that you've had inquiries about, or people asking questions?
What you find is that these kind of practices are normally a cry for help in the bigger picture, in that if a husband or a wife is not getting what they expect to, and by the way, that's a very important word, what they expect. And expectation is a massive area. Some people enter a marital relationship with a huge list of what they have envisaged life to be like. Absolutely. And when they hit a brick wall, they're struggling. They're thinking, okay, this is not what I signed up for, And so if that happens and they're not getting the support, then they'll do all kinds of things. Sometimes even subconsciously. It's not that they've made that decision.
Yes.
It's just their own body's way of reacting to. It's like a withdrawal thing.
Yeah.
When you're on substances, when you're addicted to something, you're not then deliberately reacting in a sense of saying I want that. It's just the body saying I need what I used to have. So for instance, if the wife is in a loving household with her parents, or she's getting whatever she wants, they are alhamdulillah wealthy, affluent, and then she has a particular lifestyle, then she moves into her husband's house, and he's saying no, this is not needed, this is not needed. Her brain, her intellect may accept it, but her heart may not. And then there's this battle of emotional versus rational,
Reality,
and then the rational says, you're in a marriage now, he can't afford it, but the emotional saying, but why can't he? Why did I get married and I shouldn't have? And so then it's a kind of
it's a reaction
to say, look, I'm suffering. It's an indication of problems.
Sometimes there's many cases where they're not actually aware that it has a label. It's a reaction, as the Sheikh said, to dealing with what's going on around them. It doesn't have to be throwing up. It could be excessive exercising. It could be fasting for no particular reason, then eating a lot, then fasting. It has lots of variation.
Starving. It's almost
Exactly.
like starving as opposed to.
But it's about control.
Yeah.
The one thing you can control is your body and what you put in your body. Everything else you can't really control in life. So I think with the sister, she just needs support, and she needs space as well to deal with this and absorb what's happening.
Well, only because of time, we're going to move on. We all pray for them, inshallah, and just to make them aware that there is information on the NHS website actually about
Brilliant.
maybe
And there's lots
places
of
to
support
start.
groups as well.
Exactly. Okay, I'll go on to the second letter. It reads, Dear ItTakes2, for 3 years now I've been trying to find a husband, and I've been divorced for 6 years and have 3 children. I'm 34 years old and I feel as though time is running out for me. I've tried to go out to centres and mosques, as well as going to events and putting myself out there in a halal way. I've approached friends and made inquiries as to whether there is anyone they could recommend. I've even been on a Shia dating website. The only potential husbands I can find are already married, and my only option seems to be polygamous relationships, but that is not really what I want. Please do give me some suggestions. There seems to be a lack of men, and all of the available ones are looking for women who have never been married. ZP. Okay, where do we start from?
I'm itching to say
Sister,
something.
you sound like you're
I'm interested to know what it is that putting myself out there in a halal way actually means.
I think what she means is by going
help
to
us, sister, help us.
going to events, lectures, any Islamic event, so that people see you come through the door. Someone might say, oh, who is that sister? Is she? I think that's what she means, going to Islamic events. So people in a particular community or her local mosque get to know of her, because a lot of the time you see someone once or twice, you don't build a relationship. So she's putting herself out there. That's what I hope she means. So
well, we're going to assume the best. We're going to assume the
I
best.
think so. I think you're right.
We'll
Yes.
assume the best.
I think this is such a major problem, especially in Shiaism. Sunnism is a bit different because they have so many events and they have so many solidified networks where you can go to, say, an Islamic conference, and everyone from every part of, say, in America, goes to that conference once a year. It's well known. So you have the young people walking around with their parents, and the parents see somebody, etc. We don't have that, and I think our community is still culturally very cliquey. So if you walk into a mosque and say you're from, say, you're Caucasian, white English, and you go into a predominantly Pakistani community, their cultural systems are different. In that, culturally, the people get married very young. Everybody networks, so you know their cousin, the auntie. And when you're coming in, it's very difficult to break down those barriers because everybody's paired up. Islamically, they get engaged very young and they get married, alhamdulillah. And the problem is we have a big issue with divorced women, that you are basically left on the shelf, especially if you have children, as if you're used goods. And then you try the traditional route, well, you ask some sisters, but then you don't want to get a reputation of being, you know, some vulnerable, needy individual who needs, you know, some brother to grace her with his person, like some charity case. But it's really difficult. It really is, and it's from all sections. It's from all communities. It's even with sisters who are not married by a certain age, say they're pursuing academics. It's almost like by the time you're 25, if you haven't got anybody, you're left on, you're pickled. There's a Middle Eastern term where you're pickled, you're left on the shelf, because I think men have so many options that they can be picked. It's a male market at the moment. I'm
just itching to bring the Sheikh in about something. You said something and I thought, Sheikh, so there's a sister's direct scenario, as in the challenge, the difficulty in finding a suitor, but there's also an issue of she seems to she has found potential suitors, but they're married. Is there an issue with polygamy in our community?
Of course, there's a massive problem. I agree with Sister Ruby there that we don't have a system that is established to be able to support not only the sisters who are divorced, but also those who are looking to get married, even at a young age. I think that is lacking. Looking at polygamy specifically, of course, is permissible in Islam with its conditions that are quite clearly stipulated in Sharia law. It is not legal in this country, so that's something to also understand. But you know, the problem is that many would struggle in a polygamous relationship based on the fact that it's very difficult in this day and age, and also in the West, to be able to really balance and to deal effectively with justice, as the Quran mentions, in many ways, with the two wives or whatever. And so it is a major challenge, I think. One thing to understand at the outset here is the problem of our sisters. Certainly, I mean, when it comes to divorcees, that's something we can discuss, but those who are not married to a particular age, I think perhaps there have been instances where there was a chance for them to get married, and they were very selective. And they were quite picky, to be honest. I've dealt with a few cases where one particular case of a sister who's a divorcee, and she said, you know, I'm so-and-so age, I want to give her age away, and so on. And then she's like, I'm looking for someone, and then we found her someone. And then she's like, no, but I spoke to my relative, and he's not a Sayyid, or he's not this, and so on and so forth. You know, they get to a particular list of requirements that
like a narrow criteria,
very narrow criteria, you know, and it becomes a very difficult thing to move forward.
I have to interject there,
Please
because
do.
I think I think that statement, a lot of men carry that ideology that, you know, okay, let me rephrase that, not a lot of men, a lot of people, that, you know, you should almost be grateful with the first thing that comes, you know, around for you, because look, he's a male and he's Muslim, but never mind, he can't speak English, and, you know, he doesn't have a job, but Bismillah. And it's funny that males can be picky, because let's be honest, it's a male's market out there. You can hide. Yes, it is, Brother Bilal. Let's be honest.
I'm being educated right now.
It's a male market, and I feel like this question is always brought to sisters. Oh, sister, you're being too picky. But he's 2'5". I'm 6'11".
Are there sisters who may be too picky for their own good?
There are, but they are males who are in their 40s or 50s who've never been married because they're too picky, but nobody says, oh, brother, you're being too picky. They're like, oh, inshallah, you know, when you find the right one. And then us poor females were like, okay, here you are. I'm meant to be, thanks.
So the problem isn't with we're not discussing the problem of males not getting married. The problem is the sisters are not getting married, and we have to identify.
And this letter is from a sister.
You know, we deal with a lot of these cases, and we rarely, once in a blue moon, get an email or a question from a brother saying, "I'm struggling to find."
But this is the issue,
So if we're finding the challenge to be the fact that there are many of our sisters who are left there not getting married, either divorcees or getting to a particular age, then that is not, we're not placing the blame entirely on them.
No,
there is a sizable number of them that we know for a fact have had unrealistic expectations because of the society that we live in.
There is
you know,
a group, yes, I agree.
There was a brother that I know, he's in his 30s. I said to him, "Why are you not married?" He's like, "Every time I propose to someone, they're like, oh, you're not good looking enough." Well, you know, these kind of things, I mean, you know, the Prophet of Islam says 2 qualities. If they come, you must get them married. Otherwise, there'll be fasad. There'll be corruption. Akhlaq and deen. Whomsoever does not marry, when these 2 are there, then, you know, and we have cases upon cases.
It will.
And you know, how many times the parents interject and say, no, he's not from a particular city in our country, or he's not from a particular family or clan. And all these aspects, or he doesn't have enough money. And so later on, or she's studying, she's studying. We want her to finish her education. That's all their rights. That's not a problem. We're not saying here that's haram. We're not saying that they're doing something wrong per se. But what we're saying is, it doesn't help. It makes things much worse, because later on they finish their education and they're waiting. Okay, where's the person that's going to knock the door, the great person that we've been anticipating, you know, from the heavens? You know, the person that's really going to, you know, transform our life. So that is a challenge that we've got to keep, because you see, let's be absolutely honest. We live in a society where people try different people out. You know, it's a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, isn't it?
Well, we have that in our community as well, Shay.
Yes, and then they reach to age of 30, 35, and then they're like, I want to get married now.
Exactly.
So some of our community members, some of the Muslim community, Shia community as well, have had this mentality in their minds, oh, I'm too young, you know, there's always going to be someone else who would come. There's always that's false perception and sense of security.
False perception, sense of security. This is really warming up, but we have to stop for a break, so we hope to see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum.